This podcast is brought to you thanks to the generous support of Whistler Blackcomb, leaders in delivering adventure.
Life is like whitewater kayaking. You're always between swims, meaning that when you swim, you didn't hit your roll, you got worked, you're either completely in fear, exhaustion, or you've run out of breath, right? And you're like, I gotta pull the plug. And when you're between those swims, it's how you choose to live after the swim and then take that next step.
Welcome to Delivering Adventure. This is the podcast that explores what it really takes to share adventure like a pro, with your friends, your family, and as a profession. My name is Chris Capio, and I'm coming to you from Whistler, British Columbia.
And I'm Jordy Shepard, recording from Canmore, Alberta. After a lifetime of working extensively in different parts of the adventure guiding industry, Chris and I have teamed up to launch this podcast. In each episode, you will hear top adventure guides, managers, marketers, and athletes share their best stories, advice, and trade secrets. The goal of this podcast is to share how you can take yourself and others farther from the mountains to the office and beyond. While adventure can be a solo journey, there tends to be a lot more value when we share adventure with others. When groups of people experience adventure together, they can become closer as a group, and they can help each other to go farther and to achieve more. If this group works well together, it can become a team. Working in a team helps to enhance the overall experience for everyone. Teams can come in many forms. They can be a group of guided guests, friends on a trip together, families, or a group of guides or instructors who are working together. Building effective teams is an art in itself. Building teams that are resilient enough to withstand the challenges that come with adventure takes this art to another level.
In this episode, we are joined by Brenna Kelleher to explore what it takes to build resilient teams out of groups of individuals from the mountains to the office and beyond. Brenna Kelleher currently lives in Bozeman, Montana. Brenna has developed a career as an outdoor athlete, instructor, guide, and realtor. She has been an NCAA ski racer for Montana State University and claimed the 2001 Junior World Championship as a freestyle kayaker. She has guided horseback trips in Yellowstone Park and has coached freestyle kayaking. She has also traveled to Africa leading a group of high school girls as an educator in a semester abroad program, teaching math, travel journalism, and physical education in the distant outdoors. Brenna is currently a member of the Professional Ski Instructors of America's National Alpine Team. In addition to being a PSIA ski instructor examiner, Brenna is a ski instructor and guide at Big Sky Resort, where she leads advanced women's and youth-specific clinics. These clinics include a focus on training big mountain tactics, steep skiing techniques, terrain management, and an understanding of avalanche rescue gear. All of these experiences and settings make Brenna a perfect person to help us to explore how we can build resilient teams through adventure. Here is Brenna Kelleher. All right, hello, Brenna. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Where are you coming from?
I am in Bozeman, Montana.
Oh, wow. Cool. So can you tell us a little bit about your path into the adventure industry and what you are up to now?
Okay. So my path in the adventure industry has been forever changing, and that's what I think adventure is. It's never set in motion on one path. So I've had a lot of different experiences in different sports and fields of athleticism and adventure fields, but it basically started when I was younger, at a young age. I grew up between Big Sky and Bozeman, Montana, in this place called the Gallatin Canyon on the Gallatin River. And my dad basically and my mom were huge proponents of athletics and keeping us busy. Their motto was, if we're busy, we're not going to be able to get in trouble or do drugs. So they had us doing everything from skiing to whitewater kayaking. We had horses. Where we lived was very remote, even though it was on the side of a highway. So we never were like I can't even tell you. I don't even think we ever just went to the mall to hang out with friends. We, played in the backyard near the river and then went kayaking in the afternoons. And we skied every day of the winter because my dad was a ski instructor. And so that was there's no daycare in Big Sky. But when it really started to click in the outdoor industry is Big Sky didn't have a high school. So we had to go to Bozeman for high school. And my parents both worked full time and ran a newspaper and sold real estate. But the newspaper took a huge amount of time. And basically, there was no time to even like pick us up from school. So my mother and father looked into semester programs, and I went to Bozeman High for about a year and a half, and then they were like, we need to change something up. So they found this school called the Academy at Adventure Quest. It was based out of Vermont, and it was a whitewater kayaking school, probably the first of its time. And it was Adventure Quest was an outdoor ed summer program as well. But they had decided to start a school that would go to different countries every semester, and you would whitewater kayak or trek or rock climb, but you're going to be fully integrated into the culture there. So they sent me away at 15 for a semester, and I went to South Africa and I improved my kayaking skills, had amazing teachers and leaders that are still good friends of mine today, and paddled massive whitewater. I think I was 15 when I first ran the Zambezi River in Africa, and I look back on that and still go, what in the heck was I doing? But that sort of steamrolled into my love and passion for the outdoors and the outdoor industry and the growth that you experience from being on rivers and having to navigate your way down a river, and also learning about consequences at a young age. Like, you don't really get to learn about those types of consequences and how you think through those consequences when you're in a really deep canyon with extreme whitewater and crocodiles around you. So I think that started my path down, like, how can I do more of this? What can I do for a living? How can I help facilitate this for other people? And how do I keep learning? I think adventure is something that's so addicting because you learn from it and you just want to keep doing it. So I guess that's the very Cliff Notes version of how I started in adventure.
So you've worked that into a pretty good career. What is that career been looking like for you, and what are you doing right now?
Oh, so with my career, it led to I was a professional whitewater kayaker for about 8 years. I went to 2 world championships and traveled to different areas of the country and world for whitewater kayaking. That ended, and I thought, I better go to school. So I went to school, and I was still, while I was kayaking in the winter, I was still ski racing. And I ended up with a scholarship to Montana State for an NCAA ski racing scholarship. So I ski raced through college. And then my 4th year of college, I didn't want to race anymore. And I was like, oh, well, when you step away from a sport, you go, well, what do I do now? And I was like, I'll teach skiing at this little unknown place called the Yellowstone Club. So at the time, it was not very popular. So I started teaching skiing at the Yellowstone Club. I really wasn't teaching it, I was guiding. And the idea behind guiding was just like, show these people a great time. And I was like, perfect, I can do that. So did that. And then, someone told me about getting certified as an instructor, and I was horrified at the option. I was like, what? No, I was a ski racer. I don't need to be certified. Went through the process though, and I really enjoyed it because it was another a different type of adventure, more structured, but the learning was really unique and fun. Yeah, it was challenging. I had to learn how to teach people how to ski, something I knew how to do my whole life. So yeah, I did that, and in order to supplement my income when I wasn't teaching skiing, I picked up a job with a similar school that I went to as a high school student. And it was a semester study abroad program in Southern Africa. So I spent 3 years doing a semester a year with 4 months at a time in South Africa with different stages with it, but at one point leading the logistics, at one point being one of the teachers. But that school was a lot of work, managing teenage girls through Africa.
Wow.
So, yeah. And now here I am talking to you all, and recently retired from the PSIA national team and taking on new adventures.
Wow, that's amazing. So one of the keys to being able to experience an adventure is being resilient. What does it actually mean to be resilient? And do you have an example of what that is from your career? It sounds like you've done a ton of different things. How does how does resilience either affect you or have it affected you in the past with your different activities?
Oh, well, I can give you two examples. I can give you one from the whitewater world, and I can give you one from the ski world. But in whitewater kayaking, you're in a constant state of flow because you can't, once you decide to run a rapid, you can't just stop in the middle of the river. You have to continue going. And there were a couple of times where I took big swims. I have a good friend that was like, he had a good line. He was like, life is like whitewater kayaking. You're always between swims, meaning that when you swim, you didn't hit your roll, you got worked, you ran out of breath, you couldn't, it just, you get to the point of exhaustion where you're like, you're either completely in fear, exhaustion, or you've run out of breath, right? And you're like, I got to pull the plug. And when you're between those swims, it's how you choose to live after the swim and then take that next step. And so there was one time up in Skookumchuck in British Columbia. I don't know if you guys have heard of this wave, but it's a really big wave. And it's super fun. It's super fun to surf, but behind it, there's all these whirlpools and a huge eddy line, and you're in the ocean. And there's another wave out further beyond it when the tide gets really high that's called tube stake. And it forms this tube, and I was watching all the guys surf it, and I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I got this. And I ferry out there, but the thing about it is it would tube, and then it would crash. And from the shore, it doesn't look like it's breaking that hard, and you're like, I could handle that. I tell you what, I ferried out there, I caught that thing, and it crashed on me so hard. I lost my paddle, everything. Like, I was out in the middle of the ocean. I mean, I guess it's a peninsula there, or bay. And I had no paddle, and I had to try hand rolling, and there's eddy lines everywhere. I come up from air. I think I tried like 10 times. And finally I pulled the plug. And luckily, one of my buddies was there, Jed, who came out in a Zodiac and pulled me in, but I took a pretty brutal swim. And the only thing that went through my mind when I swam was hold onto your boat for dear life, because those whirlpools are so deep that just having a PFD on was not going to save your life. So I had like my whole body wrapped around my boat, just like as hard as I could. And then he got to me and pulled me out. And that was when I was like, he looked at me and he's like, so what are you going to do now? I'm like, I'm going to go surf that wave again.
Now that is resilience for sure. There's such a great example.
I didn't do it a third time though. I was like, hey, I'm going to go out for the second round. I survived it, and I was like, whew, okay, I'm going to paddle to shore. And then I was like, I don't need to do it again. I'm good.
Yeah, if you've ever watched the tide switch there from slack to moving one way or the other, it is pretty amazing, and it's worth noting that a cubic meter of water weighs a ton, and that is a lot of power coming through there. So yeah, so how would you define resiliency then? That's a great example, but like if you were to give it a definition, what would that look like?
Resiliency is, to me, it's follow through, and knowing in your brain that you can do something within your capability, right? So I knew that I could do it. And I knew that I need to hold my paddle harder when I go out there because it's going to crash. I know what it's going to feel like now. But to like clue into those sensations and then go back to your fundamentals, I think that's resilience, and like take it on again. And I think sometimes when you find yourself in those areas, falling back on your fundamentals is the most important thing.
Yeah, and be able to sort of pull yourself back together when things go sideways, which is an amazing life skill to have, because of course we all end up facing a lot of challenges in life, and being able to to push through that is super valuable, for sure. And that's something that we've touched on in the show a number of times over the last couple seasons. Now, linking this into our topic today, which is building resilient teams. Throughout your career, you've worked with a number of types of teams. Can you tell us about some of them and how they differed from each other?
I guess I would start when you're on an athletic team. But everyone is, so like, let's say MSU, I'm racing NCAA, right? You're on a ski team. Well, okay, so you're racing for Montana State and you are a team, but at the end of the day, you're still racing for yourself. Whoever wins wins. So that's kind of a funky team to be on, because you want to be supportive of your teammates, but you're also like, I need to kick their ass, right? Oh wait, I probably shouldn't use that word. Sorry. I need to kick their butt. But like that type of team doesn't always necessarily lend to the healthiest relationships of being on a team. And I would go back to resilience for that, because some of the team members were pretty awful. But that's again where you have to pick yourself up again after snidey comments or bad finishes. And then that's when you start to you would like to rely on your coach. And I think that's the coach's position, to start to recognize those things and help facilitate change. But that's, for me, that was being part of a team that was pretty rough. And learning that dynamic, I was like, man, I don't ever want to be on a team like that ever again. Once I got through my years of ski racing, I was like, that's pretty hard. If I were to ever find myself on a team like that again, I'm going to speak up. Right. So that's like being a participant in a team. And I think being a team leader is also being a participant in a team, but that lends itself to a whole different level of building a resilient team. And when I guided in South Africa, we had 24 teenagers and 4 teachers. And one of the terms, I was the team leader and logistical coordinator, right? So my job was to put all the logistics together for the 4 months of where we were going through Southern Africa. So we were in South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, and Botswana. And so the whole time we're traveling and facilitating educational activities, physical activities, but within that, you're with the same 24 children, young ladies, at the same time, the whole time, and the same team of teachers. So you had 2 different teams that you had to organize and make sure they were on track to be healthy and not become toxic. Because 4 months, 24/7, that's a long time. And I would say in building a team like that, the key things are trust, communication, and organization. Like being able to communicate effectively and frequently was when we were most successful. When we were least successful, someone felt unsafe in being able to express what they thought, what they were feeling. And that's when you would see the team break down. So I would say that in that moment, the first 2 weeks with your team is the most important because you're building up their trust in you and in the group and in each other. And really, a successful team is built around like, do I feel safe with that person and understand that we can conquer certain things if I feel valued.
I think that's super important. The point that you made there about there being two sets of teams when you have a group with multiple leaders. And as a guide, an instructor, I can definitely sympathize with the challenges that come with working with other leaders, because guides and instructors tend to have quite strong personalities. And most of the time you can work very well together, but sometimes if you have different philosophies, values, people want to get their points across, they want to be the leader, the big dog, then you can find yourself in a conflict, and that can be quite challenging. It's interesting that I did a multi-day, what was actually multi-week program quite a while ago now, doing a mountaineering course, and I spoke to one of the instructors like 20 years later, and he confided in me that he'd actually had a hard time working with the other leader. And so the two of them as a team had struggled because they had a hard time agreeing on some of the decision-making criteria that they were doing. One person had a risk tolerance apparently that was a little bit different than the other one. And so they knocked heads, but they were able to keep it amongst themselves. I don't think the participants actually knew. And then on the other side, I would say that even though there was 5 participants and we didn't get any big fights, I didn't think we worked that well together either. And so it was interesting kind of trading those notes. And, we still were able to keep it together and go out and do big things and had a great time and life-changing experience. So in your experience, thinking about all of this, what does it take to build groups of individuals into effective teams that can be resilient in the face of adversity like challenge, discomfort, or danger?
I think the first thing you need to do is set up a leadership quadrant of understanding of what makes each person a good leader in that team and where are their strengths and their weaknesses. It's I think one of the most humbling things about being a guide or leading a trip is being humble and being able to recognize where something is not in your strength. And you work in the guide industry, and you probably see where there's a lot of ego. And ego is the number one thing that gets you in trouble, right? It's kind of that trap of what do they say? It's goal setting and ego that generally lead to traps of when teams go wrong, right? Or things happen that weren't supposed to happen because there wasn't effective communication. And so I think one of the things that's really important, and that I've been on a lot of teams, and the teams that have been most successful is when we have been able to set up leadership quadrants and understand what each other is better at and where we need more assistance, so that people on your team can lift you up in that area and go, hey, Brenna is not tight on the details. She's a spontaneous motivator, but she's not tight on the details. Who's tight on the details here? they're the ones that need to step in for that. And it's always one of those things too, where if you know where your weakness is, then you can also help yourself to be better in those areas and not try to force your leadership in those areas, where you can let someone else step in and shine. And I think that's where, when you're setting up successful teams, that's really important, is knowing your strengths and weaknesses and where people shine and where they need work.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't be good at everything. And the goal of having a team is that collectively you can be good at getting things done and effective. And so, as outdoor leaders, we all strive to have a resilient team. And using your example of a ski team, it does benefit the individuals on the team if the team is strong and resilient. Like I ski raced as well. My father was on the national Alpine ski team in Canada. And you are competing against everybody, including your teammates. But it's really not beneficial if you show up and with your team and everybody knows that it's a team of one, right? The kind of Lance Armstrong kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, we got a team, but we actually have this person that we're helping to the top somehow, right? And then if that person gets injured or heaven forbid found to be doping or whatever might happen, and they're off the team, that you can't have no other competitive individuals on the team, right, that are capable of carrying on the torch. So it is really a full team effort, even in individual sports, being on a team. So what are some of the mistakes that leaders can make when it comes to building their resilient teams?
I think the lack of trust in their team, I think, is huge. If they're not able to trust the people that are under them, whether they were selected to be on that team or not, you're there together, so you better work it out. Or you thought you knew one thing about a team member or another, and then you're like, oh, that's not different. And then there's a lack of being able to pivot and figure out where that person should fit in, can be really bad for a team. Loss of communication and having someone on the team that is unhappy and it goes unaddressed, that negative energy, there's that saying, misery loves company. It's gonna spread. And I love studying. Have any of you read Endurance? No, the Shackleton book of their journey to the Arctic and how he was able to basically save everyone. How he did that is amazing. And he wasn't even with them the whole time.
That's a classic example.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's like he wasn't even with them the whole time, but for some reason, he made everyone feel valued, even when he wasn't there, and had a plan for them. And that's how he was able to save his people, right? That he, as a leader, that he was on this adventure with. And I think leaders who have teams that suffer, it goes back to that communication and then that unwillingness to address certain things because either they don't want to, or it's uncomfortable, or it's going to disrupt something. And if you don't address it, you don't clear the air and figure out what's actually going on, then you're going to see a pretty quick demise of your team. And it sometimes it takes longer, but really that person is going to find that negativity area and try and spread it.
That's great. Do you have an example yourself of a time when you made one of these mistakes or someone close to you?
When I was guiding in South Africa, there was a teacher there that she was a bit older than all of us. And she had definitely seen and done more because by a bit older, I would say like 20 years older than me. And I was the one in charge of the team. But she also had pretty sure she had a PhD in biology. So she was also super smart, and had taught in Ecuador and in the Galapagos and just an amazing woman. But she did not get along with anyone. And I was the team leader there. And it was very challenging to handle her energy because even to the point where the kids were having a hard time with her. And I didn't address it earlier enough. And I didn't, I look back on that now and it could have been my age, but I felt like I didn't really allow her space to shine either. And that was a huge learning experience for me. I look at that and I'm like, wow, I could have put her in a more successful light, um, rather than feeling like I had drug her down. And I tried really hard to, oh, then I thought I was doing the right thing. But in my mind now, I reflect on it being older and probably her age now. I reflect on it and go, ugh, I should have allowed that person to shine. I should have found the right space for her. And I shouldn't have like felt like I was in a power trip, right? Like I was the one in charge. It ultimately came down to me. I needed to make the decisions. And I think that's really important. Like knowing when you have to step away and let someone else, you know, get that limelight. That's not something a lot of people learn how to do. Um, so I think that would be one of my learning experiences of when it didn't go right and what I need to take away. It's a good life lesson.
Yeah, it's a great example. Another mistake that we can make is having making assumptions. And that's often a factor of not knowing each other well enough and not having pre-planned or trained enough. And so you maybe get thrown together as a team and you don't know these other people and you make assumptions that maybe they have a higher skill set or experience level than they do. And that can go one of two ways. Either you give them a task as a leader and they don't know what to do, but they carry on trying to fumble their way through it, which could be dangerous or ineffective. Or you put them in the position where they come back to you and say, I don't know how to do that. And if it's in front of other people like clients, it can be awkward, right?
Yeah.
And it shows your lack of training and pre-planning and that have gone into this whole thing. And then the clients start to doubt what's going on around them too, right? They're like, wait a minute, that makes no sense. So just have good policies and procedures and take the time to do that. Team meet and know each other's, like you said, strengths and weaknesses, so that you don't make assumptions, which can run you into trouble.
I think that's so important. I'm glad you said that because I was searching for the word of like, what does it mean when you're not like clear with a teammate? And I do think that making assumptions is one of the major issues of a cracking team. And on the other side of that is you could be a leader that's and I've never been this type of leader. I think I'd have to ask people, but where they're too micromanaging, right? Where their assumption is everyone automatically doesn't know how to do it, but yet they were hired for that certain thing, and then they micromanage and nitpick every move. So I think there's like that balance of like, where do you turn someone loose? How do you test the validity of what you know about them? And then so that you're not making an assumption.
Yeah, exactly. So let's turn this around now. What are some of the mistakes that followers can make in a group that can increase the vulnerability of a group and make it less resilient? So we've been talking about leaders, but let's look at it from the follower, the team member aspect.
I think followers, if they don't voice concern, then they're never heard. And so they may have something going on that they aren't willing to share, which leads back to that communication piece. And then that's where you start to spiral because there's a lack of understanding between each other, right? Like if someone who's a follower, or I shouldn't say follower, I'm trying to think of a different word, but one of the participants, because I feel like I'm starting a cult here when I say follower. But
team members,
one of the team members, here we go. When you're a team member and your unwillingness to share, or you're kind of closed off, that can affect other team members. And, a lot of people think that, oh, we're in this culture of oversharing. But when you're going out into the field and you're doing something like physically taxing, where, you know, you, there could be a loss of life or an injury, or there are all these other implications that surround us being on a ski hill, being in whitewater, being out on the ocean. Like there are implications to that, and it doesn't take a lot for something to go wrong, right? And when a team member doesn't voice something or holds it inside, that's where the communication breaks and fractures, and that usually leads to resentment. And so I think if you are feeling as a team member that you're not being recognized or you're not being valued, like value is a huge thing, then approaching that team leader is really important and expressing that. And hopefully that team leader will hear you and help try and facilitate some change so they can be successful.
We do a lot of meetings, right? Between us in teams, but the question is, are they effective? And so it shouldn't be just the leader spouting what you're going to do. There should be multi-way communication, and that the door should be very open for team members to speak up and everybody to have a veto on the team and be able to speak their mind. And then, sometimes maybe they'll take it to you directly as a team leader, supervising guide or instructor or whatever senior person. Sometimes, maybe they'll come to you directly, but I would hope that we can create these environments that people feel comfortable talking in the group as a group dynamic and saying, voicing their opinion. And, they say there's no stupid questions, right? And it's totally true. Because if somebody brings something up, say a safety thing, and they say, hey, we're going to travel on this glacier, and, what's the snow covers like? And, are we going to fall in crevasses? And then you can have a good discussion about it. And maybe that team member comes out of it with some learning, saying, oh, well, I didn't realize conditions were kind of this way, and this is how it's been over the years on that glacier, as opposed to, maybe the rest of the team says, yeah, we hadn't really thought about that. Maybe we need to look into that or change our trip plan or change how we're approaching it. So it can go either way. But either way, there's learning that comes out of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there really is no such thing as a stupid question. And sometimes you'll hear a question that you're like, wow, that was, why are we asking that? But then you don't realize who's in the room with you, and maybe they're just missing that small piece of information that's going to be the link in the chain that, breaks down the team or breaks down to an event that leads to some disaster because there was that small bit of information they weren't aware of.
Absolutely.
Building on something that you touched on earlier that Jordy brought up with the assumptions, I think just to kind of add on here is maybe not making those assumptions as a team member of the team leader and what their motivations are. And I've suffered from that, being a member of a team where you look at the leader and you think that they should be doing things differently, and perhaps you don't empathize with their position and everything that's going on with them. And I've also been in the leader position where the people that you are looking after, in this context, it was guests on a multi-day trip, are maybe making assumptions about why you want to take them to certain places, thinking that maybe you want to go there and not realizing that this is the best option. We've given this a lot of thought. We're doing this because this is actually what works best for the entire team, yourself included, and we're actually putting your needs first. But it's easy to make those assumptions and to start to criticize people from the sidelines without knowing how each team member feels and then what's going on with the leader of the group. And when I say this, I mean, it could be your parents as kids. I certainly, suffered from that when I was a kid, right? And I think a lot of kids do. So, I mean, it applies universally.
I definitely agree. And so I guess the the other thing is when I almost think it's easier when you have a bigger team, but then like putting yourself in the ski instruction or guiding role where it's a team of two, it's you and the guest, and there's very clear outcomes that they express to you. But on that particular day, you may be like, wow, this, I cannot take this person there, you know? And there are times in Big Sky where it is, we have a product that is, it's a guide product. You don't have to be a certified guide, but it's basically, you know, you are certified to a certain level to understand the mountain and the conditions and take people down the big couloir or the snowfield or into the headwaters, which are all very extreme terrain. But when you have that team of two and you are the leader, but you are also being compensated as that leader. So it's kind of one of those weird areas where it's a guest and you're like, well, he wants to ski the big couloir, but he's definitely not good enough. He would be okay if it was like a really deep powder day and there was no chance for slide for life conditions. But I also know that over here, it's really good snow. It's not as steep. Maybe we could teach him a little something, you know, being able to communicate that and phrase it so that they're not feeling like they're getting left out is the team of two, I think sometimes is the hardest or most challenging, especially when you're in the position of, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think?
And we're talking about resilience here, and there's all kinds of team dynamics, right? That and interactions. But in terms of resilience, it's really like, how can we still be effective? And one of the things that leaders or team members or clients need to realize is that maybe there's a selection of options, and that's resiliency. And it's like, well, we can't do that, the thing we wanted to do, but we can go over and do this, right? And at least you're getting something done, and there's value, there's perceived value from the clients, and there's a perception of, you know, some sort of success with safety, of course, strongly laced in there. And so, you know, having plan Bs and Cs is always a good idea in any team environment.
Yeah, being able to pivot, it's so important. And being able to pivot comes from knowledge and experience, right? Like when I was younger, I couldn't pivot as quickly. I couldn't think on my toes as quickly. But now, 20 years later, I'm going, okay, these are, and the experience of having done it a lot and figuring out, like, I remember the first time trying to have a hard conversation with a client about where they want to go and knowing they cannot go there. It didn't go as well as it could have, you know, and I had to learn that lesson and learn how to communicate that effectively. And that came from knowing your terrain. Because, you know, a lot of times you get these people and you have a 5-minute conversation, 10-minute conversation, and you have a little like write up on your booking that says, this is what the person wants to do, this is their ability level. You can't, that's information, but you can't trust that information because you haven't seen it. Right. So,
and they don't always know what they want. They're trying to, you know, give some information because they're being asked, but they're like, I've never really done this before, so I don't know. I want to have fun.
Yeah.
Like what? I'm not sure. I don't want to get injured.
Yep. Or they've read something
get scared
in a book and they need to check mark it, right? Like they've got the check mark mentality, that goal setting.
Yeah. Well, this whole bucket list culture, right? It's like, you know, sometimes people's motivations are just because. And then for us as teams, we have to think, well, you know, what is the overall objective, which is obviously safety, and then, you know, fun and experience is close in behind. And how do we build it so that we are able to deliver that adventure and be resilient to all the different changes and everything from weather to conditions to equipment to people. People are the big factor in there that are often throw the wrench into the works, and we need to be resilient and able to deal with that. So while this podcast, it tends to focus on subjects through the lens of participating in and guiding outdoor sports, the lessons we explore can be related to many parts of our lives. So when we talk about building resilient teams for adventure, what can we take from the field and apply it to the corporate and administrative world?
Problem solving. I think being in the field, you learn to problem solve in so many different ways, whether it's with gear or how you communicate with people or how you have to pivot and change the experience, how you might have to change your own emotions about how you're feeling for the day. Maybe you wake up feeling horrible. Well, that I'll tell you what, that energy spreads. So if you spread that energy, then that's going to your guests, right? Or oh my god, I've been skiing 100 days of the year. I haven't had a day off. I've been with clients every day. If you walk in tired, then you're going to share that energy. But for the corporate world, the thing that I think transitions, well, I think energy, when you're with a corporate world, like energy is massive. Like you're walking into an office, and if you walk in grouchy, it's going to be a not fun day and you're not going to be very productive, right? But the other part of it is like problem solving, like basic things. Oh, a buckle broke on a backpack, or someone hurt themselves and you have to figure out how to build a splint in order to get them comfortable until you can get rescued. Like there are so many ways that you have to problem solve when you are the leader of a team in any type of adventure sport, that is directly related to someone who it would build creativity and diversity in that corporate leader by knowing how to problem solve.
Yeah, absolutely. There's huge resilience in that, being able to carry on. I've seen boot soles fall off of boots, and if people don't have footwear, they got nothing in any of this
Yeah,
kind of stuff that we're doing,
exactly.
right? Except for maybe kayaking, you might not need footwear, but you still need footwear to get to and from the water. So it's still an important thing. And so, yeah, if you have, like, literally, I wouldn't say duct tape, I'll say Gorilla Tape is actually a better option nowadays. But yeah, those kind of simple repair things and problem solving capability, where it's like we just hit a full stopper, like we can't do this, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait, maybe we can, and then you're able to carry on and pull it off, maybe in a modified way. But that's huge resilience, and it's so appreciated by the team and by clients and by your employer and anyone who's around you.
Awesome, Brenna. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this episode. It's been amazing.
Thank you guys. I appreciate your time.
If you'd like to find out more about Brenna, you can visit her website, bigskybrenna.com. You can also message her via Instagram at Brenna Kelleher. We've posted these links in the show notes. Okay, Jordy, what stood out to you from this conversation? What does it take to build resilient teams through adventure?
Wow, Chris, where to begin? Brenna covered a lot of ground. I will share just a few things here. I think when we are building resiliency, we are really building durability. This durability allows us to withstand the curves that might be thrown at us and helps us to handle and overcome challenges. As Brenna said, resiliency is knowing what you can do, and this is the key when it comes to coaching ourselves and others through adversity and overcoming challenges. When it comes to building resilient teams, she listed a number of things that we all need to be aware of. First of all, communication. This needs to happen often. It also needs to happen in a way that helps people to feel safe to express how they are feeling. Building trust, which needs to start early. And organization. This needs to take into consideration what role each team member is going to play and in a way that allows everyone to complement each other. Brenna also highlighted the importance of allowing others to shine. Sometimes we can all be guilty of wanting to hog the limelight. A good strategy for leaders is to use opportunities to let others spend time in the spotlight. This means allowing others to take the lead, give briefings, lead meetings, and potentially take the credit.
Great points, Jordy. As Brenna shared with us, when teams don't work, it is often because people don't feel they had a chance to express their concerns or fears. Leaders were not able to keep their egos in check. The goals that were set may not have been realistic or attainable. When there were issues, they may not have been dealt with early enough, and this causes negativity to spread through the group. People may have also felt they were being micromanaged, and leaders may have made assumptions. Assumptions can include misreading abilities, expectations, and intentions. It can also extend to misidentifying the understanding of instructions. Putting all of this together, resilient teams trust each other, share in each other's success, and these two things together allow everyone to feel valued. When people feel valued, they will be better positioned to perform at their best. Now, over to you, our listeners. What were your takeaways? Have you ever been part of a highly effective, or perhaps a mostly defective team? We would love to hear your insights and stories. You can find our contact details in the show notes. Also, we need your help. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, please share it with your friends, colleagues, and clients. The more people we can get following and listening to the show, the more content we can bring you. Our thanks again to Brenna, and thanks to you for listening.